morning, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello, no.
Oh. Yeah. Good morning, Master. Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. Come to the same day. What did I say?
So please then, we can start as usual with setting our motivation. And as you know, our motivation is to really do whatever we possibly can to attain the fearless state of enlightenment by perfecting all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. But we realistically know that to perfect those trainings, we need to have a very good understanding of what they are about. And we must try to gain that understanding by relying on a non-mistaken presentation. And so it is with this in mind that we are here this morning to listen to a teaching on the Graduated Path to Enlightenment series of teachings. Yeah, so as David was saying too, like that please to kind of keep your microphones off so that we can have a clear line between the two of us to give you the best possible chance of hearing the teaching.
Yeah, what did yeah.
So the subject matter of today's teaching will be the perfection of wisdom, and that we have covered in some fashion or other, not so deeply in some cases, the perfections of generosity, ethical conduct, patience, enthusiastic effort, and meditation. And indeed, in covering those also, looking at subject matters such as the generation of love and compassion and so on. It is to be understood that really the purpose of gaining perfection in generosity, ethics, patience, etc., is for the purpose of servicing this particular subject matter, the perfection of wisdom. So they're all really a stepping point, stepping stones towards actually gaining a perfection of wisdom. So that's how important it is.
shira kwaji nyamle chokdwa ta janju ko sem desum ko ri kechim cha o de de jamba ya da de nyarang ge lamla toni to be shira ko simba yorwa yena dila shira ko kwaji nyamle sigmarwa sigmare wa ya dikya ba jeng o su shikudwa ko de.
And so that as we know that when performing any actions that we want to be counted as the perfection of generosity, perfection of ethical conduct, and perfection of patience, etc., that our mind must be conjoined with the attitude of enlightenment. That is the mind of enlightenment. That is what makes it a perfection of generosity, action, or perfection of wisdom, or perfection of patience, action, etc. Now, when we talk about the perfection of wisdom, of course, here, when we engage in any action to do with the perfection of wisdom, that is also conjoined with the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. And so this is again what qualifies it as a perfection. And that so up to this point, we have been performing actions through the other 5 perfections, conjoined with the mind of enlightenment itself. From here on, now that they both these minds, the mind of wisdom and the mind of enlightenment itself, are required to constitute a perfection of wisdom action. And so, as we normally do in the context of this text, we will first set up the merit field. And so this begins with the setting up of the central figure in the space in front of us, and that in actuality our own root guru in aspect the Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, and that above the Buddha then we have the lineage of consecrated practices headed by Vajradhara. On the Buddha's right we have all of the extensive practices lineage headed by Maitreya, including such luminaries as Vasubandhu, Asanga, etc. And then on the left, we have the lineage of the profound view headed by Lord Maitreya, including such luminaries as Arya Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Buddha Phalita, etc. And then below them on both sides, we have the representatives of the Kadampa lineages. There are 3 different schools. So the school based on the textual preference, those on the school based on instruction, and the Lamrim school of the Kadampa lineages. Below them again, then we have on both sides the representatives of the Geluk tradition, at the center of which is J. Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa. Below the throne of the central figure sits a group of our root and lineage gurus, our those whom we have received teachings from, and there at the center is our own root guru. Around this grouping are the 4 sets of the tantric lineages from the Anuttara Yoga Tantra through the Yoga Tantra, Charya, and Kriya Tantra deities. They are all there. And then we move down through the different 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon, the 35 Buddhas, etc. And then we have representatives of the Arya Bodhisattvas, the hearers and solitary realizer Buddhas, the Arhats, then the Dakas, Dakinis, the heroes, the Dharma protectors, so that we set up the whole merit field without any exception.
아니 랑데 타고 들래 아니 랑라 디저 마디가 심장 탄자다 체디 파마 아니 저거 파마다다 소주기 샤라기 저와요 봤다가 대신에 저거 조고 나서 봤다가 대신에 저 가서 아니 밤에 심장 다가 이제 랑데 대토네 제 나한테 대보면 되네 아니 타이다 마게 심장 탄제 아니 어디 스텝 마사오 내가 요섬자
And now we, again, looking around us, we set up all kind mother sentient beings in the space all around us. We can include here our parents, our relatives, those who we are familiar with, those who we are unfamiliar with, those who are neutral to us, also our enemies, those who we have kind of bring dislike into our minds. All sentient beings are all there, countless sentient beings. Again, without exception.
아니 심자라 미베게 아니 진짜 대화되자 대외포 아니 미대바 동아리다 토도 받다 아니 내가 소리 시간 대다게 아니 고소도 그 연대도 잡았잖아 왔다 되잖아 아니 내가 소체 대다게 아니 지금 잡아 투가 홀래 메시지에 시간잠자는데 아니 20번 째잖아 아니 다 가자저 소체 대다 탐들라 아니 20번 다 시간에 20번 찾아지 안 받다 팀소서서 왔는지 다 뭐이메 찾아 왔는 거 봐시 왔는지
And we look on all of the kind mother sentient beings with a mind of compassion, knowing how desperate they are for happiness on the one hand, but they're being bereft of that happiness, and how they certainly want to avoid suffering on the other, but they are being inundated with suffering. And so this is a part and parcel of our attitude, and also then looking towards the merit field again with the mind of faith, we see that all of the members of the merit field are marked by the 3 syllables, at the crown, at the throat, and at the heart. And that they send out light rays from the heart center, and they go to the wisdom beings, invoking or inviting the wisdom beings from their natural abodes who come, and they dissolve into all the members of the merit field. And we feel that they have become completely empowered by the wisdom beings. Chicken has a little bit difficulty, I think, picking up the voice here because maybe a few people haven't got their microphones turned off.
Yeah. Oh, good.
That's better. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What a motor house.
I hear somebody starting their car. Maybe coming from outside. I hope.
Yeah, that what did I 소신 아니 소신 내가 감자가 아니 저거 나가자 야라도 뭐 메제다 저 나가자 저 뭐 야라도 뭐 메제다 저 근데 나가자 what is 소신 장지 저 나가자 what is
And so as normally then so we pause here to offer the 7 limb prayer plus the mandala offering to the merit field in order to accumulate positive merit and to purify negativity.
아니 다 야라도가 메데다 소사티 다데 전 다데나 아니 소신 디가데 샴리야 제가 지템 전 담미네야 최저 수마지게 지가 지템 자체 나기 지자 자외 라말 파체 예게 아니 제가 장발 라마 동가 바치베 주바데 지가 지템 야체 아니 이게 잠자야니라체 아니 제가 냐레 지라 기바 라마 디가 지가 지템 전 아니 가소다 다바 샴테 라마가디라 미코다 코보지레체 안들라 야라도 메데다 전 다가자 초사 디바장 전 아니 뭐다가 저기 사람 또 와게다 지고도 라메고 또 반다 제다 지고도 어디서 체체 어디서 체 아니 내가 다가 저기 더 머리 change 아니 라메 디자사 그래서 뭐랑 디자 넘버 또 마셔도 왔다 라부투가 몰라 파티 잠자야니다 라부투가 몰라티 아니 가서 라메 디자사 라마데 라부투가 몰라 투가 코토라다 내서 서서 어디서 왔다 내가 라부투가 도리 change 아니 산자 탐제가 다니 어디서 고바시 어디서
So now again we bring our attention to focus on the merit field that begins to dissolve, and that here from the bottom up with the Dharma protectors, Dakas, Dakinis and so on, each line dissolving into the one above until that we are left with only our own root guru in that area of the merit field. And then on the left and right we have all of the members of the Geluk tradition, the Kadampa traditions, and the profound view and extensive practices traditions also dissolving upwards until we are left with the two figures of Lord Maitreya and Lord Manjushri on the left and right of the merit field. And finally, all the members of the consecrated practices lineage also dissolve up into Vajradhara, so that now we are left with the five main figures of the merit field: the central figure of Guru Marinja Vajradhara, our own root guru, Lord Maitreya, Lord Manjushri, and of course Vajradhara. And again here we can offer mandala and the seven limb prayer. And then fully again the dissolution continues with the Vajradhara coming down, dissolving through the crown of the central figure, Lord Maitreya and Lord Manjushri coming in from the left and right and dissolving into the central figure. And finally our own root guru moving upwards to dissolve into the heart center of our own root guru. And again we pause here to make our offering, and also to realize that this central figure of Guru Marinja Vajradhara now is the embodiment of all enlightened beings.
어디를 찍고 봐서 아니 들라 야라도 봐 메데다 잡아 다가자 저 초상을 등장해서 시우리 개체 왔다 들었잖아 왔다가 저 찾아와도 주의사고 제소라고 제가 주소다 탐제다게 전주 친구 책 개고 전화 누구 전화 이 개체 뭐 말해 개체 주데 아니 깝도 아니 지금 차체에 다저 차체에 아니 저 왔다 저 아니 내가 가서 대바샤야 다 차체에다 고순 900원에 차체요래 왔다 와는 당에 차체와 아니 가서도 아니 쳐봐 피해다 딱 지금 가서도 무슨 가르쳐 쳐봐 상 두고 요나 디상 아니 내가 라도 교수님 계속 되겠다는데 아니 감수 또서 또한테 직단 거 하네 아니 배치 가서도 다 주네 아니 피해 왔다 된다잖아 찾아와도 주제 아니 샤바 아니 세대라기 다 류가 예수 그거는 디바 가르사유메 디게 tema 아니 다가네 생각만 내가 토마메마스 디바도 막 다해치도 왔다 뒤서 쳐서 저 찾아와서 주의사고 아니 제수이라 아니 랑이 겨와를 제수이라 아니 생기 겨와다 내랑 뭐 다 냐조다 라제다 자주서 말라서 왔다 아니 다 생기 겨와를 제수이라 제 아니 어디서 제수이라 저 찾아와서 주의사고 아니 그 최제 아니 샤와 제수이라 아니 어디서 아니 나가려 맞고 소화돼 아니 저거 그거 구해 왔다 되잖아 다가자 지금 아니 어디서 다가자 what yala to my mendeta jama papin what ka je kasoda ta ka je ani de mendeta de chubo sum de ko de chubo sum se de ani je ani kasoda ta ranje kasoda te kasoda ta ka je这个让给大家这个牛毛都送这个大家牛毛都送这个把希望接受大家 가서 라다 신이 되네 다 신이 되네 수주가 밖에 아니 가서 다 지금 가서데 아니 지금 다 가자 또 가져와라 봐주지 디바다야 아니 대다게 아니 또 탑재 아니 신이 되네 전 아니 수주가 또 탑재 마상 맞게 전 왔다가 또 왔다 되게 아니 배전 채도 아니 지금 매트 피해 왔는데 전 다가 또 지금 수주 거는 매트 피세트로 왔는데 전 다가 나sam로 강투도 갔다네 강투도 갔다잖아 왔다 시
So, we pause here again to recognize the kind of pure purpose of the merit field, how the remaining figure in the merit field is the embodiment of all Buddhas, embodiment of all the members of the merit field. And again, through the importance of our concentrating on purifying negativity on the one hand and accumulating positive merit on the other, we again offer the 7 limbs of practice with the merit field. So here, when we engage in prostrations, we prostrate with our body, speech, and mind. We can prostrate by visualizing that again we are multiplying all the bodies that are prostrating, that we are purifying all of our negativities as well of body, speech, and mind. And then in that context too, all of the negativities we have accumulated since beginningless time, all the negativities that we are aware of and not aware of, when we make our offerings, we make offerings of all of the best that we possibly have, but also using our imagination in offering all of our root virtues, all of what we can imagine in all of the 3,000 million world systems of what is excellent and best, and making offerings of that. When we are rejoicing in not just our own merit, but the merit of all others, and particularly merits of all of the hearer Buddhas, the solitary realizers, the Arya Bodhisattvas, and all the Buddhas, all the holy beings, and so on. And then we make powerful supplications for the Buddha not to enter into parinirvana, but to stay with us and teach, and then to make a very pure dedication of all of that we have done. And that, to include the 3 main purposes of being able to really purify all of our mental afflictions, of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, of any fault we have accumulated. And so the 3 great purposes of purifying all of negativities that we have accumulated from not relating to our spiritual teacher correctly, right up to any mistaken attitudes of mind we have in relation to the non-dual unified method and wisdom, and then also to seek the second main purpose of all blessings, to be able to relate to our spiritual teacher in a perfect way without any fault, and also to be able to generate all of the realizations on the path without problem. And then the third main purpose is that in order to facilitate the first 2, that we are dealing with getting rid of all of the obstacles and obscurations, be they external, internal, or secret obstacles, to our best being able to practice on the path.
what the Dutch was soon going to was sort of any matter. What is it? What are the Takaja, Ranki, Jake, and just force out to judge Yalatu meditation, Foshin Kobe, Yalatu meditation, deep church, so myself, church, and what is what is Takaja, what is the Dutch was soon to connect, what is the what is it? And then the Takaja, the lama tuwa doji chante, ane ta tila mene, ane kasore ta kaja te kasore ta, ota tila chane ta tila mene, ane si kasore, mozo tanda di kuchi tanya lama lawa la tuwa doji chala suwa, tikwe choku tanya la tuwa doji chala suwa, tamcho longku tanya la tuwa doji chala suwa, tamcho kudu lama la tuwa doji chala suwa, ta kaja tuwa kudu lama la tuwa, kintu kudu lama tuwa doji chala suwa, ta kadu kudu lama la tuwa, chujo kudu lama la tuwa, tabla kudu lama tuwa doji chala suwa, ota kaja, wadi fikje de dönde ne besamtan da köne lama köne da köne kadın şugada sıyata da kaga kira da tabla kundu da ke yinska o da deja
Then, this offering of the seven limb practice and the mandala in kind of multiple times here is in recognition of the absolute quintessential importance of the act of purifying our negativities, obstacles, obscurations, etc., and the accumulation of positive merit. And that in practicing the Dharma in general, this is, of course, very, very important, but it's absolutely essential for being able to practice on the Mahayana path. It is that which really can facilitate any possibility of realization for us on the paths and grounds. And so it's extremely important for us to use that, to focus very firmly on that in the context of a teaching like this or a practice like this. And then we bring our mind again to focus on the central figure of Guru Maninja Vajradhara as the embodiment of all Buddhas, and we offer the stake-like
hello 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 maybe 40 minutes call not one yeah
no from only 40 minutes
1 minute and then later settings it
I think his internet might have gone down, Gemma. Yeah?
hello now coming now
No, but I think Noel's internet maybe went. His internet
yeah, okay.
maybe failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll call him and see. Hang on.
Yeah.
Hello?
Noel, what happened? Your internet went down, did it?
Sorry?
Did your internet go down?
Yeah, the whole computer went off. I'm not sure what's going on here. Yeah. I'm trying to get the computer on again and get going. Are you guys still up?
Yeah, we're still up.
Right. Everything looks fine. I've got the lights on my router.
And then my daughter is ranking to Pemada, Nimada, Tare, Samata, did the Nakaja. Yanto Chance, Yanta, our Chunje. What the Anita, upon the Lama of the Dagicho from the condition of the Kusu to the status of the Sunday Chavalatan and Tabuk of the Niba of the shoe, Super of the tension, Sunday of Mamato, but the chess was ordered for my ship.
So just to continue on, so we arrived at that point that we're focusing on the central figure, last remaining figure of the merit field, the embodiment of all the Buddhas, Guru Maninja Vajradhara, and we offer a 7-limb prayer mandala and the stake-like prayer which goes to my most divine Guru, Lord of the four Kayas. I make petition to you, Shakyamuni Vajradhara, my most divine Guru, Lord of unimpeded Dharmakaya. I make petition to you, Shakyamuni Vajradhara, and my most divine Guru, Lord of blissful Sambhogakaya, Lord of sundry Nimanakayas, embodiment of all Gurus, embodiment of all deities, of all Buddhas, of all Dharma, of all Sangha, of all Dakas, of all Dharmapalas, and finally, most importantly, embodiment of all refuge. I make petition to you, Shakyamuni Vajradhara. Now we prepare to invite the central figure of Guru Marinja Vajradhara to our crown. We set up the lotus sun and moon disc mandala on our crown with the lotus symbolizing renunciation, the sun disc symbolizing the wisdom, and the moon disc, of course, bodhicitta. And we make the supplication prayer of glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the payments of your body, speech, and mind. Following the first recitation, the figure moves a replica from the central figure towards our crown. After the second recitation of the four-line verse, the figure arrives and seats itself on our prepared seat. And then after the third recitation, we have the certainty that Guru Marinja Vajradhara will be with us until we ourselves attain the state of enlightenment. And now it's a point at which we can really rejoice that we have this security, we have this support of Guru Marinja Vajradhara on our crown until we ourselves attain enlightenment. That's a really wonderful outcome. And so yes, at this point then, having now set ourselves up for our actual practice, in this context, listening to a teaching, here we can go through a glance meditation on all the subject matter of the graduated path, from how to relate correctly to a spiritual teacher all the way up. And the good prayer to do this with is the foundation of good qualities. So this is a point at which we do this. Then we turn our mind towards the text itself, where we have arrived at the sixth of the perfections, the perfection of wisdom. And its headline, or this outline, is as follows: how to train the mind in special insight, which has the nature of the perfection of wisdom. And so the first two outlines here are what to do during the actual session and what to do between sessions. And that with regard to the first, we deal with preliminaries, the main body of the session itself, and what to do at the conclusion of the session. And when we are talking about session and between sessions and so on, we understand that this is the point at which we integrate the training that we have gained through listening and studying the Dharma, the wisdom arising from listening. And then also on top of that is, of course, the second process of gaining wisdom, the wisdom arising from contemplation. This is the crucial stage of analyzing what we have learned using reasoning until we reach a point of certainty, ascertaining really what the meaning is. And then we put that into deeper meditation, deeper analysis or deeper experience through the meditation. And so it's at this point that we're looking to gain the wisdom arising from meditation.
what did this what that
And so here again to emphasize that when we talk about meditation and wisdom arising from meditation, we understand, the etymology of the word meditation is inferring a habituation, strong, constant, persistent habituation is what is required in the context of meditation. So we're looking at the subject of wisdom. We're looking at the preliminaries then with regard to wisdom. And it's explained here that they are much the same as what was explained for development of mental quiescence. But in particular, there are extra requirements here. And they are that one really relies on relating perfectly to one's spiritual teacher. That one is studying the essential, quintessential instructions for the attainment of special insight. One is viewing one's guru to be inseparable from the meditation of deity. One is making a heartfelt, intensive, powerful supplications and requests for realization. And one is backing that up, as usual, with the accumulation of positive merit and the purification of negativities and obscurations. And it is said that these particulars are quintessential, are absolutely essential and necessary preliminaries for the realization of the view. So that it is pointing out that combining these referring referring to those as these three that are combining how, relying on the spiritual teacher and listening to the quintessential instructions, and then two, the heartfelt request to the Lama, and who is seen as indivisible from one's meditational deity, and then making effort at the accumulation and purification of negativity. So it's saying that by practicing the combination of these three consistently, these will serve as the necessary preliminaries for the realization of the correct view. So how all of this works is as follows. Our goal is to attain the realizations on the Mahayana path, and in order to do that, we have to be absolutely certain that we are accumulating the necessary causes to bring about such a realizational results, and that here they are mixed into the, of course, as we know, the basic or main cause and the cooperative conditions. So here, the main cause is always going to be our focus on, for example, the attainment of the realization of emptiness and the degree to which we're putting in that focus and that practice and that effort. And then all of the cooperative conditions are everything we do around that to support that. Of course, they're cooperative conditions. They're supporting our conditions. And just like a seed acting as the main cause requires, good soil, watering, sunshine, and so on in order to germinate and create a sprout. Then also our practice requires the side practices of the accumulation of merit, the purification of obstacles of negativity, in order not to leave our seed of Dharma dry without any cooperating conditions or cooperative conditions. And so if that's the case, we can never hope for our seed to germinate and produce a sprout. So this is an inviolable kind of relationship that if we are focused on our studies, on our practice, and we seek certain results or realizations, then we have to examine scientifically what are the causes that are necessary for this to become about, what are the conducive conditions necessary to bring this about, and we must produce those causes and conditions. Otherwise, we would be trying in vain to gain the results that we so need or so seek.
안 다음에 죽을라 차라 가요 말 이래다 독시 체조 독시 최제 독시 체제 민자외게 안 시가사게 된게 다음에 제다 시추 가사를 셈에 최신 된게 다음에 직다 가지 이소도 가사게 다음에 추게 다음에 이소 what did it show.
So this then briefly concludes the preliminaries. Now we move into the main body of the session and what the focus is there. And this has two subsections. One is how to meditate so that one ascertains the selflessness of persons. And secondly, how to meditate so that one ascertains the selflessness of phenomena. And here it must be pointed out that in terms of selflessness, there is no difference between these two. The difference comes in terms of just the subject that we are focusing on, and to be able to kind of differentiate there.
다음에 달라 베베 리베 남다 도마시 소요바 이나 야스 망고치 소요바 이네야 안다 레 당고 왔는데 딱 말아서 소로 레 당고 왔는데 아니 네시 거네 달라 파나 한 차라 야서 다 네시 거네 아니 다음에 달라 파타치 수고 요레스데 거서 레 당고 왔으라 왔다지 또 차트대 아주 그래서 가서 찰라베 이 추기 딱 가자 라자남 왔다 제대로 토네다 내시가 토네 왔다 서로 따와이나 또 가라서 차대요 요레스 왔죠.
So with regard to the first, that is ascertaining the selflessness of persons, here it points out that within the teachings of the conqueror, the Buddha, that there are many reasonings given that will facilitate gaining ascertainment of such a selflessness. But with regard to beginners, it is said that it is easier to gain such a certainty or ascertainment when looking at this subject through 4 key points. Using 4 key points.
charla ta de chugye sa raja nam ni tubu loshim be nega so ta ni tubu loshim be nega chunje to ta ka tama ta nilam chunje la wa ta ka chunje to nga nyam to ta ni gi ki to dam ting le zima de ne an ga je lenge is cha ta ka ka ju ine ji ro pa na ji ka so de tama nilam chunje ni tubu chunje ko je ne an ji ka so de nga se de ta ka to 직벌의 중화이나다 강해의 중화이나다 나갈 중화다 헛갈 제가소를 나 쓰다 로라 링링 차대지 와다 제대 차대다 맞을 생겼어 그랬어 로 대장야 왔다 링링 차대가 들어 맞을 생겼어 다지 가서데 다까지 저기 다 나라도 저거 다 로다까지 나라도 강갈 유야다 주주 춘제를 유야되게 스타트 차대가 쳐와 어다 맞을 생겼어 도래 다 군다스가 좀 내. 생겼어 그지 아니 저기 그래서 랑슈고 유야되게 샬라 때 먹고 저 랑슈고 유야되게 어떤 생겨도 군다니 요거로 와 어떤 생겨 일라서 내가 랑게서 맞아 내가 대다 뭐 맞게 몰라 셰시게 최게 내가 대다 대자 내가 소셰 주변에 다 티처럼 언니가 되셔도 내 제매 쓰지도 남자로다 내 내가 됐다고 맞아 봐라 녀 됐다고 딱 교주 됐다고 두주스 녀 됐다고 주고 셰바 나 냠도 니기 기도 담ting에 차베 세 담ting에 차베서 나질 생계기에 나이 제주 세워 요라서 나질 생계 나진다 나 제가 가지고 있는 유해원데 다 이나야 데데지가라 로이 소직네 때문에 이나 거다 제가 세부 차도가 제가 뭐도 그랬어 소위 왔죠.
So the first of these points is saying that our normal way of regarding ourselves is like as if we are in a deep sleep or in a kind of dream state. That this sense of me rises out from like the very center of our heart, which is we're utterly convinced in the existence of this self. This is referred to as the innate grasping at a self entity, or the instinctive grasping at a self entity. And that here, when we have any instance of fear arising or harsh suffering arising for us, it is this concept or perception of a self that arises, the innate grasping at a self entity. Even animals have this, and it's sort of like something that arises naturally in our thinking, in our perception. And this is to distinguish this mistaken grasping at a self entity from another, which is referred to as a more artificial grasping at a self entity. So there's this innate or instinctive grasping at a self entity, and then there's a more artificial grasping at a self entity. Here we're discussing the former. So then it gives an example. So for example, if you're accused of doing something and you're accused in the wrong, somebody's making false implications about you, you have this immediate sense of, oh, this is not me. I didn't do this. This is not my fault. I am not guilty of what you're saying. And this sort of reaction to a false implication or an accusation brings forth this sense of a self from depths of our heart, which is very powerful, and it arises. And this gives us a clear idea, clarifies how we perceive this innate grasping at a self entity.
다 데이도서 다 데네 가서 데이도서 쉐베 차 참으시겠다 쉐베 마 아마데 왔다 데네 지금 로데네 실레다 가시라 로 데네 차셰 참으시게 참으시게 로데 간도소 달로데 가봐 그데지라 소부도 간도소 아니 소다데 그네 소도 추제다고 소 딱과 잡아서 왔다 데네 제바이나 딱지 제바이나 대야 로 치마에 진짜 어다데 다데데 로 치마데 딱지 제 로데 슈 지체를 소이나 아니 로가마 데 예네서 어다 두고 조사 유베 소라지 나스도 두고 조사 유베 소라 로데 에미 예네 다 두고 조사 메게지 예네서 동상에 시 마도 가야 미 가서 미요베 미요와지 다 요그레스 아니 제바 징 다디가라 샤네 아니 나니 가서 나와냐베 로요 오버 아니 가서 오버 어서 징차수 다 못주서 징차수 있게네 셰베 차셰 참모시게서 다고 그래서 다 당지체 다다 다베서 나질 생게제 나 가도 소래 네네 라게 퐁퐁가다 소에 네데다 라게 퐁퐁가다 아니 퐁퐁가 나 야나 라게 루다 셉니레 데 셰도 마이시 데 셰바 지금 말에 데 셰바 지금 마이 퐁퐁가 레레 퐁퐁가 레레 야나 루다 셉니 레레베 때도야 때도아 마이 무자 마이 데데 마이 나야 퐁퐁가 초점다 루셈니 초점바 밤에 와 데이터도 또배와 딱 마이 버 당고냐 축도도 주변 나시 요 좀바데 나질 생계게 나질 생계게 나이 진주이니스 보다 어디에 저다가 저기 어디에 저 가서라 저돌아 맞대봐 저기 랑갸와지 요바지 다 나와내시 진데티 보다 나질 생계게 진주이니스 어디에 시작 어디에 저 일라서
So then, how we kind of like analyze or look into this sense of a self that arises innately or instinctively is that we need to kind of like use a subtle part of the mind, like a secondary part of our mind. So you have a main part that is focused on what is focused on, but at the same time, we are examining with a different part more subtly as to how this particular self arises, how we identify this kind of self-entity, and by what means can we analyze this self-entity. So this is kind of like a something that is very much need to be based on good experience. We have to develop or generate this kind of experience, because what we tend to happen is that if we looking with the secondary part of the mind, like spying on the sense of self, that it can become we can do this too intensely, and so what happens is that this notion of an I, of a self, then sort of something that disappears, and then we are left with nothing at all to focus on. And so the trick is that we need to learn that when we are thinking of an I or a self, that we can develop a part of the mind that is able to very subtly, non-overtly examine and continuously that sense of a self. And that's very, very important, that when we are able to examine in that way, to analyze in that way, then we get an idea of how the self is perceived to exist in this innate or instinctive fashion, and that we start to understand that what the self-grasping mind fails to recognize is that it is in any way arising dependent upon the five aggregates or the body and mind, that it fails to recognize that it does not exist separately from these, or that it does not exist separately from each of the aggregates in turn separately, or the body and mind separately, or the collection of the five aggregates, or the collection of both body and mind, and that it does not accept that it is something that is merely imputed by thought, but rather that this self-grasping mind, this innate sense of a self, has the notion that it is established as something that can be pointed to, that it has some sort of an independence, self-powered attitude, and that this is the way in which we need to see the innate grasping or innate perception of a self-entity, that it sees itself exist in that way. So this innate grasping or apprehension of a self-entity is something that does not see in any way that it has to be established dependent upon the body, the mind, the five aggregates, the collection of the aggregates, the collection of body and mind, etc., etc. But it rather sees itself as something that is kind of completely manifest as something that stands out there, that is self-existent, that is independent, that is something self-established, that it can be pointed at. But when we subject it to analysis and we say, okay, let me see, let such a self then be manifest to me when I analyze, we actually find that there is nothing that can be pointed to, that there's nothing that can be seen, nothing that corresponds to what it appears like. And so when we go through these four essential points, four key points of, and this first one, by the way, is referred to as gaining certainty with regard to the way the object of refutation appears. And that when we go through that, then we go through the next one, which is called determining the full set of possibilities. That the third one, determining that they are not truly the same, that is, that the self and the aggregates and so on are not truly the same, determining that they are not truly different. And at the conclusion of these four key points, it is hoped then that we can have this certainty that there can be no possibility of an objectively existent self-entity, and that we can be clear about that. It must be said at the outset that for those requiring an understanding of emptiness, of the concept of the doctrine of emptiness, it is absolutely vital to understand what is referred to as the object of negation, that what it is that we're trying to deny or to negate here, that we must gain conviction with regard to that. Without that, we can't be said to ever get a handle on what is meant by emptiness. So when we talk about gaining an understanding of the object of the negation, we're looking at quite a subtle understanding here, a subtle mere refutation of the object of negation, and that we have to understand that what it is we are refuting or negating, and that is any sense of an object or phenomena being objectively existent. And so here we have to be able to distinguish quite subtly between holding that position and not falling into the fact that thinking that that means that it's non-existent. We have to understand that there's a difference between that subtle sense of existence and the fact that it still doesn't mean that things are non-existent. And so we get to the point of what is referred to as that is merely imputed by thought. And when we're looking at the object of negation, this is kind of like the flip side of that understanding, that we understand, gain conviction with regard to what is meant by merely imputed by thought. And it's saying that it does not infer that what is merely imputed by thought is something that is non-existent. It says no, but it has a certain type of existence that is predicated by it arising independence upon something else. So it is merely imputed by thought. It's referring to the fact that one, it is not saying anything about being non-existent, but is actually affirming that the way that it must exist, that it must arise independent upon something else. To clarify a little bit there about talking about the subtle object of negation. Here, when we talk about an object having a lack of objective existence, and so we say because it relies or it arises in dependence on, for example, parts. That is a slightly more coarse level of understanding of the object of negation. But when we can understand that an object lacks any objective existence because it is merely imputed by thought, this is the most subtle object of negation, referred to as a subtle conventionality, conventionally subtle understanding of the object of negation. So this is why it said that it is not easy to gain the middle way viewpoint, that one has to be able to steer one's understanding between various, not just extremes, but levels of subtlety to gain that perception of phenomena as merely imputed by thought, and that this is the most subtle understanding. And once one really has, as for an understanding of that subtle object of negation, then one is not too distant from actually gaining an understanding, a realization of selflessness or emptiness. So that this gaining of a realization, actually, of that which is merely imputed by thought is really the key point of gaining a realization of selflessness or emptiness, and that here we must try to understand again from us as beginners in this. We're presented with the kind of like notion of how to recognize when the sense of self arises in the mind like that, to find that part of the mind we can analyze without being disturbed, and we can continue to do that, and then to really see how powerful actually this naturally rising or innately rising sense of self is in our daily life, really, just in our life in general. And as beginners, we have a lot then of kind of a very powerfully embedded attitude to try to overcome. And so this is where, again, we see the absolute quintessential importance of generating a positive merit that will fuel our meditations in this way, and of course the purifying of negativities and impediments to our being able to see the truth of the matter, to be able to persist with our practice without obstacles. So all of this is extremely important, and to do all this kind of practice as is explained in the preliminaries in unison, in combination with the rest of those preliminaries. It's very, very important to kind of like get to the point where we can reach that point in our analysis where we have recognized the object of negation. So it's the mere lack of the mere recognition of that object of negation, and try to keep the mind steady on that. Then when that fades, again, the intensity or clarity of that fades for us, go back into the analysis to look into, okay, how is it that this so-called innate grasping at a self-entity arises in the mind? How is it perpetuated, and so on? And then to search for that, find that it is not existent in any way, it is merely imputed by thought to arrive again at the object of negation, the mere object, reputation of the object of negation, and to stay with that in the mind. And you can see, again, in order to sustain this until we gain realization, you can see the importance of being able to, as it were, clear the way for ourselves through accumulation of merit and purification of negativities, so that we can really sustain this effort of meditation until we gain what we referred to earlier as the wisdom arising from meditation.
당분에 축도 주바시 아니 여번 집한테 아니 가질 행정 전출했어 전출 임배 다 이 진단의 유대 다 내가 진단의 유대 나디 그 진단의 유대 유기 나디 진단의 유기 나디 아니 다 가스포 고고레스 갈고고서 딱 나디 고 요레스 좋아 또 배타서 나고 부여 말이
Anybody else hear me?
what the next 가서 다 진단 이 유기 나대 안 거고 그랬어. 딱 가라 맞아 봐. rangawa 좀 해서 얘도 거주 가자티 임베 아니 셰기 셰베 고아도 셰기 지금 대세 잡는데 고아선다. 특성 얘네들은 치마이나 숙제를 내게 다 내만의 대소물 왔다 뒤에서 가서다 랑도긴 예바 장했잖아. 그렇아? 이베 랑기 규정도 파자네. 아니 제책에 딱 가서다 서버 소이다 잡아 쟁자지 소도 제바체는 무슨 배다 노예 번에 한 거쳐봐 전체게 녀바 제고 그랬어 거쳐봐 제고 그랬어 자대 내가 뭐 가자게 내 수 있게 녀베 가자게 내 이거 제고
Well, saying then that once we have as is explained previously, again, that understanding of how the innate grasping of the self entity appears to our mind, that it's something that it sees itself as established as something that can be pointed to, that it's independent, that it's standing alone. And so then when we look into this, again, an understanding, examining or analyzing how is it that we perceive such an entity, or look at the object of the mode of apprehension of that object. This is referred to as gaining an understanding of the object of refutation, the cause to be negated, and that and said that, again, as pointing out as well here, how the importance of gaining a self-powered understanding of that is key. It's not enough to just gain an understanding by somebody else's explanation, or just by reading words about it, gaining some general sense of the idea. But we have to kind of, as it points out in the text here, get to see this understanding nakedly, kind of very clear, clear, as something which has arisen from the causes that we have created in our own mind through being self-powered in our meditation. And so this is the first key point, really ascertaining the way the object of refutation appears. Absolutely key point.
소소 예와도 맞아봐져 껴껴 제와이나 디컵라 나디 그때 차기도 내 제메 나 마이 대대 나디 그때 차기도 안 디차베 갑라 아니 로이 소르치기더라 아니 나디 기겠다 디가 진다 그때 스팅기도 나디 아니 다데 그때 스팅기도 오다다 같이 랑게 류다 샘다 다 디가라 마테베 류다 샘라 마테베 아니 야나 지금 오다 마트백에 랑자와지 그런 것으로 예 샘스 아니 예 공부 나스게 텔레폰 주고 소라지 또 그래서 라와워스 요마지 나서 로는 강강 싶죠 차대기도 차원에 심어서 지금요 지금보다 딱 대대기 나지 여러 배스나 요마로 대대지 나지 여봐 이나 아니 가봐도 난막 차사 당하는 죽을 주다 다 차사 류다셈 때문에 차로 그요래 아니 대대지 맞셈 제발 이거 요마봐 어다데 로이 수직네 어다데 제발 딱 가봐도 제발 아니 많이 받에 가르스나 나 내가 돼 말이야 이나 딱 워터 나 랑자와 많이 받에 라이 받도 워터 그요래 워터 그요라 어다데 대대 이마 예사 어다 대 거기다 가서 다 창답도 돼요 그요래 근데 어다 디저 어다데 가장 예면 내서 어다데 얘나 지금 여봐 얘나 어다 디때네 다 랑자와 가야마 라와 주바지 답이 여봐 얘나 그세 주도 여자들 세 주도 이거거든 이거 여봐 나 많이 받아 간다는 거였으나 나 매배 되었다 말이 때 얘나 나 라와도 맞지만 나 여단 간데서 랑게 류다 셈라 딱 봤어 앞에 샤점 대대 가지 여봐 그 요거 주고요 최 강아지 딱 나자 말이 랑게 딱 공부나 소바 나 따서 나 갈라 따세 그다 공부나 소바 되줘야 딱 당을 하래 공부 봐세 줘도 예와 채도 공부서 뒤에서 누구 조사 지안이 그만 샘내 나가래 딱 샘제 가봐서 제 좋아도 샘까지 예와 채워도 샘제 누구 거죠 딱 가르다 두고서 뭐다 같이 매번 말해 이나야 나랑 속에 라와도 주바 나와는 싶어도 믿고 딱 가르 여다데 또 그야 봐 샤섬리 샤스 딱 대답 아니 대도 그 자와 제도고요 나기부터 레상내 툭툭고요 뭐다 대대답게 다 같이 지금 처음에도 딜레이션을 라와도 주바지 딱 되는 매딩 what
So in summary, when we want to recognize this sense of an innate self, an instinctive self, that is pointed out again as saying to watch when you're being accused of something in the wrong, and you realize, the first thought is, no, I didn't do that. That's not my fault. It's not me. and to really try to examine just with a secondary part of the mind at that time, how does this sense of I here, how does this sense of me that I'm referring to appear? How is it that it is perceived, and that this is kind of like, very much something that is identified with, my body, my mind, my aggregates. And it seems to be very, very strong, very, very apparent, and something that does not necessarily have to rely on or depend upon the body or the mind, but it's something that stands out separate and independent of that, like something self-established. And we have to try to get used to looking at that, and then we understand that, okay, if there is such a self really existing, then it is something that I must be able to point to, mentally, even physically, just to say that this is something that is really out there, separate from everything else. But when we actually go to examine that, when we actually engage in the analysis, we really don't find such a self. And then we have to conclude, one, this does not necessarily mean that a self is something that is completely non-existent. It does mean that this self that I'm looking for, this self-established self, this independently existent self, does not exist, because it's just not found to exist. It's simple. But therefore, the ultimate conclusion is that this notion of me that I have, this sense of I that I do have, is something that is merely imputed in dependence upon the body and mind, merely imputed ultimately in dependence upon thought. And so that's something that the way in which we analyze, or the way in which we reason, goes like that when we're doing this meditation. We can't find what we're looking for. That does not when we don't find it, that does not mean that it is necessarily that something is non-existent. It just means that that self, the mode of that self, is that self that I'm looking for, something independent, something self-established, something objective, is non-existent. That is non-existent. But that the idea of a self itself is something that is merely arises in dependence upon our body and mind, in dependence upon merely being imputed by thought. Now, we have to be able to see things both ways, that what is not existing at all, and to refute that, but also how actually things do exist, and that they are arising in dependence, and that rising independence is something that makes everything possible, that it's therefore allowable, that things are not non-existent in one way, but they are existing in this merely being imputed by thought, allows for happiness to exist, for unhappiness to exist, for karma to be accumulated. It allows actually everything to function.
다 문에 동반이라 녀바이나 동반이라 녀바이나 개왕아지다 레데다 아니 타바다 탐제 개발 녀바시 차원제 주고 이 경제가에서는 다 라운드 주바 매바 있다 다 가서다 다 가자지 차체를 때 주면 다 차체를 때 주면 매바 있다 다들 교계 차체를 때 주면 매바 있다 아니 이 다그데 아니 대외게 아니 주주에 밑에 동네기 육방에 돼 아니 라 가서는 샘 딩네 아니 누가 차죠 되고요 봐 누가 좋아요 다 라와데 좋아요 아니 뭐다 요만 거 가서는 이 가서는 다 내저 로다가 라와데 좋아요 아니 거기에 요요다 아니 미상보이나 독자 차요 만 미독자에 미상보 차요 만 내가 로다 원데네 라운드 주바네 조아 메베 때문에 보고로다 조아 메베 조아 마치바데 때문에 그제 메사도 거 라운드 메베 따티고 요로 라운드 메베 따티고 your round the two, you know, and what doesn't them for the doesn't them how to go around me, but that what did it do?
So what are the implications of gaining this kind of understanding, of gaining this kind of realization? Say, once we gain conviction in the doctrine of emptiness, then the past and future lives become very apparent. The validity of karma becomes more and more certain to us. The possibility of gaining the omniscient state of enlightenment becomes very, very much possible for us, because now we understand deeply how the law of cause and effect works, that surely if I collect the necessary causes, I will gain the desired results. And that this then is further refutation, and it continues to refute the notion that anything could be self-powered, self-existent in this way. Because if that is the case, nothing can happen. There is kind of like a permanent freeze on everything. A person is permanent. They can't engage in good. They can't engage in bad. Nothing is possible for them. There can be no change. No change is kind of like an obvious, refutation of the self-powered or the independently existent, because we can see for ourselves that the change is ubiquitous. It happens all the time. And so we see that there's a natural way that life has to be, and thinking of it, or the way we grasp it, is something kind of unnatural, certainly mistaken. So this is very, very important that we be able to translate the intensity of our understanding, or the subtlety or the depth of our understanding of emptiness, of a lack of any objective existence, of the way things exist by merely being fused into a deep power that will fuel our practice to accumulate the merit that we can, and to eradicate the negativities that create obstacles to our gaining realizations on the path. So we can see that this the implication of this understanding of merely being imputed by thought is something that infers a natural flow of life. So that once we gain any realization with regard to emptiness, the phenomena being merely imputed by thought, the persons being merely imputed by thought, it has a powerful, it's a powerful weapon against any mental afflictions, because it's dealing with the very root of the mental afflictions themselves. And so it's then that indeed then leads us on to develop all of the necessary positive causes, such as developing renunciation, that kind of being able to gain definite emergence from psychic existence, which is so essential to gaining liberation from psychic existence, and furthermore to kind of further enhance our appreciation of the mind of enlightenment, which is the essential cause for enlightenment itself. And that here it's both the recognizing the powerful debility debilitating effect of our ceding to the way the self exists because we cede to the way it appears. That grasping at the innate sense of self. And we see how this is such a stumbling block, even to our good intentions, that we may have a virtuous motivation, but before we get to the dedication time, that has turned into a mental affliction, or that the happiness that we experience is only that which keeps us more enmeshed inside the existence itself. And this is because our minds have not been cleared of the kind of a damning, debilitating reality of thinking that we have this innate sense of self, and perceiving this innate sense of self to exist. And we are not really fully aware of how free we will be once we contradict that, once we damage that way of viewing the world and gain a subtle understanding of emptiness and selflessness of self, of persons and so on, and that will free us up to really zoom along the path.
Oh yeah, that is a good dress about the
So we leave it there for today. I'm sorry, the internet has kind of played a big part in our teaching today. I apologize for that. And so, yeah. And so we reflect on how fortunate we are to be able to reflect on this topic of emptiness, of really trying to recognize the object of negation, to realizing how phenomena are really imputed by thought, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had the same understanding and opportunity. May it be the case, I will see that it is the case, so Guru Devi, please bless me to be able to make this so. And the result of our powerful supplications, the nectar lights descend from Guru Manindra Vajradhara on our crown, coming down to purify all of negativities and obscurations of ourselves and all other sentient beings in general, and in particular, any obstacles to our being able to gain this understanding of emptiness in our systems. And furthermore, we are endowed with the blessing of being able to quickly and easily gain clear, naked realization of this topic. So then we reflect on the subject of renunciation, how really essential this is. Because again, the Varanasi So, and that renunciation, like the notion of why we are in cyclic existence, and the nature of cyclic existence is again more and more brought home to us in relation to the pandemic of the COVID-19 virus, whereas it is that which is affecting rich and poor, old and young, those who are powerful and not powerful, etc., etc. It is irrespective of its victims. And it's saying that why is this the case? Because we are in cyclic existence. This is why this is being possible. And that here we meditate on what is necessary to gain release from cyclic existence and to get out of cyclic existence, that sense of a definite emergence from cyclic existence. And from that is established a lotus mandala seat at our own heart center.
subject
And then, as following the subject matter of our outline today, we contemplate on there being no objective existence, implying that everything is merely imputed by thought. That in turn implies that nothing can exist out there objectively. And so, from that, then we develop arises the sun disk mandala on top of the lotus at our heart. And then reflecting on there being no objective existence, that therefore, everything arises independent upon parts of the pattern, dependent upon causes and conditions. Therefore, everything is possible, is made possible. I can attain the state of liberation. I can attain the state of enlightenment. And that brings to mind the mind of enlightenment, that the wish to attain that state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And from that reflection arises the moon disk mandala, which is established again at our heart center. And then we make our supplications to Guru Manindra Bajadara on our crown to come and take the moon seat that we have prepared at our heart. So, glorious and precious Guru, come take the lotus and moon seat placed there at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind. At the conclusion of the first recitation, the journey begins from our crown down through our central channel. At the conclusion of the second recitation, arrives at our heart center and takes that seat. And at the end of the third recitation, we feel that they are steadfast there until we ourselves attain enlightenment. Then the leaves of the upturned lotus fold over and enfold that figure. They are sealed at the point, at the top point by a white vajra, and then around that is the ringed three mantras, starting with the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha, and then the mantra of Manjushri, Om Arapa Tanati, and then the mantra of dependent origination.
lama to cha never dele kule reset rangi chibone kadi ko malo reset chobala tene ane rangi akata de kaso de lunga yesu ke sabe tikwa de tiba seti sengama denga thoma me tikwa de tiba ane tagani chige di shabe bacha chama tamja ane ba chane rangi ta chige nyudo sanje koba thola za long tile kyo tamja chane ane chige kaso thame ke nashen gane kana ta takwa ishu de chadwa yabu shu chosu sang kaako.
And then from that within that enfolded lotus, powerful light rays start to emanate from the figure within, permeating through the leaves and permeating every cell of our bodies, from the crown of our heads to the soles of our feet, and all sentient beings likewise, and then purifying all negativities and obscurations in general, and all of the imprints of those negativities as well. And then balancing all of the elements of our body, purifying any defilements within our channels, winds, and drops, and then again purifying our thought of ordinary view, and so that we are endowed with all of the good qualities and conducive conditions to being able to develop all the realizations on the path as quickly as possible.
And then Rangi Shindo Lung the Niling, Lama Shakas and put the Legion, the Langi with the Lama Shakas and Kulu Juzo. Rangi Shindo sent the Niling, Lama Shakas to the Legion, Rangis and the Lama Shakas to Tulu, Rangi Lunga is to the Lama Shakas and Kuzo to or image also. And then Rangi, they get up the Tanya, and the Lama Shakas to share coming to Taya, which you to subject Tamja Sanja Komato Nimat, so the Kauko.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the principal cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of Buddha. And then through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the main cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is automatically transformed into the mind of the Buddha. And then I see that I am now inseparable. My body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. My own place of being is transformed into a palatial mansion of the enlightened being, and that I have gained all this right now. And this is something I really is wonderful. I rejoice.
Lama Shaja Singh, Kurjuba, Tugale, and the symptom of the research of the said that Simja Sosola Tibala Tena, Tena, and the Lama Shaja Singh Kuzu to the Moye Mechasus, and then Tanya, Nelly Kyotan, and then Lama Shaja Singh Share on the so that Simja Tamjas, Dr. Sanja Koma to be here, Simja Sanja Sala cooking is like you might deliver to so they are which also sort of.
Then, seeing myself as a fully enlightened being, I send rays of light equal in number to all the sentient beings in the existence from my heart center, and as those rays of light touch them, they are automatically transformed into enlightened beings. Their body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, and their place of residence are transformed into the enlightened realm of an enlightened being. And again, I rejoice how wonderful today is, not only having attained that state of enlightenment, but having fulfilled the purpose of others in leading them and taking them to that state of enlightenment as well. This is fantastic. And then this process of taking all the sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, those sentient beings themselves, myself as the agent for doing this, and the action of doing this itself, all are merely imputed by thought. They lack any objective existence and merely imputed by thought. Merely imputed by thought, which then develops into the sense of bliss combining with emptiness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and emptiness.
And
again, I know I'm just doing this through my own power of imagination now, but I make a powerful dedication that it will quickly become actually manifest.
어디 뒤지도가 뒤지도나 뒤지 못하네. 겨와디 저저
So Annabelle Moragik Chivatik Dusken Chigre. So okay, Annabelle, away you go.
Thanks, Genla. Thanks, Noel. Genla, you said that the main condition for us achieving emptiness is, the cause for us achieving emptiness is our study and practice, and the cooperative conditions are purification, accumulating merit, and the blessings of the Guru. And I was actually wondering yesterday, in fact, when a Hinayanist or Theravadan practitioner achieves emptiness, what are their cooperative conditions? Because presumably they do not require the blessings of the Guru, because my understanding is they don't really have one. So I know it's not really relevant to us because we're Tibetan practitioners, but I was just curious as to how they achieve it.
So again, I'll take some of it. That's all.
다지 코라도 지가서 구루 요만세 말 코라도가 야미 쳔보다 로베다 드레 요르마 요르데 이나야 땅어서 계속 세보시면 이나 똥바지들라 타라 먹고 요래 다다 거저 히나야나다 거저게 똥바지들 배 채워지 제다마에 루게 똥바지들마다 다다지 가서다 돈이 처음 쓰겠다 말이 제다마에 루게 똥바지 다 제다마 제도니 제다마도 도대봐 어디에 다 똥바지래
So
내가 소사 지도다 거래
yeah. So again, I said I understand your question, and that first, just to I do believe that those on the Hinayana or Theravadan tradition do have teachers. They may not refer to them as gurus, but they have teachers and abbots and so on that obviously take care of their students, and so that is certainly part of the way. The other thing is that, of course, I think they have. It is necessary to engage in practices of purification of negativity and the accumulation of positive merit. And that another point to make is that my belief is that for most cases, when the Theravadan tradition practitioners speak about emptiness and realizing emptiness, they are doing so with an understanding of the Vaibhashika tenet system. Or in some cases the Sutantrika tenet system. So they are working from different tenet systems than we are referring to here.
다 가자 코나 속에 똥바지들라 가자 라고 보고 있다 가자 처음 먹을 하그래.
So again, I'm saying yes. You did mention that when we talk about the term emptiness or selflessness, there are many different levels of that, going from coarse to more subtle understandings and interpretations of it.
가서다 거기 덴바 마토나 매도로와 덴바 도와 켈레사로와.
So can you understand that? So
다른 와딩 걸 제다마 도제마게 덴바 도와 켈레그래 덴바 마토나 매도래.
So it must be understood too that within the tenet systems of the Vaibhashika and the Sutantrika, they accept true existence, because if they say there is no true existence, it means there is no existence at all. So they fall into the extreme of reification. That's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
But this answers are very easy.
I think it's not something I'm quite capable of understanding, but I appreciate the answer.
Good. I'm joking. Wonderful. Very good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Owen also.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say Owen also had his hand up. He had a question. Is Owen?
Oh,
Owen
sorry.
there?
Okay, Owen.
Owen.
Have you got a question?
Yeah.
No, sorry, I was working the system and I got it wrong. It's all good.
Okay.
All right.
You're deep in samadhi there, Owen. Huh?
Yeah. Tana ngodo dela tanjuba lo jogor wa. Tanjuba lo jode toni to ba ina tanjuba be chapla ko na. Banget la na.
That's all again?
Toni to ba ina tanjuba be chapla ko yare. Tada lo dela.
So, according to this tradition, if you are to realize emptiness, you must hold the Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, tenet system.
tanjuba be chapla ko. Ta de
So it's kind of like it pervades that you are a member of the Prasangika Madhyamika tenet system.
ta gaja jege jeda ba ina do de ba ina sem za ba ina ta ane kuma rajiba ma ge ba te lam shuba ina ngenjo ke tu gure jangju ke sem ke tu gure ta ngenjo ke ba ina ngenjo chuma mai ba ke ba ina ta ka sa de ngenjo chuma mai ba ke na yara ga lam la shu tu gure wa jangju sem ba ina yara ga lam la shu ina de lam la tholam me do cholam le de tu mare ta ka ja tekji ba ina ne jangju sem ke ba na tekji tholam le tu gure ina tekji cholam la do tu mare gari sana toni to be shira yo mare chang yo mare.
So when, from the point of view of the Prasangika Madhyamika tenet system, those who are holders of the Vaibhashika, Sutantrika, the Chittamatran, and the autonomy, Madhyamika autonomous point of view, they can generate the mind of enlightenment, but they cannot have a proper realization of emptiness. So in terms of their renunciation, that they were headed towards the realization of the hearer or solitary realizer vehicle results, but they cannot.
This is because the nyaran ni ke tholam bodol nyaran nyendu range theba chibu sumke tholam bodol cholam lo to mare cholam lo to.
So it's saying that they can all just gain the path of accumulation, but they cannot enter past into the path of preparation on the 5-path system.
가자 tholam le sumi tholam chungo ding chembo tholam chungo ne dingla jowala toni to shara gore mato dosa yama toni to shara ton jowala.
And so because there are 3 sections to the path of accumulation: smaller, medium, and greater. And in order to proceed from the smaller to the medium, one needs to have an understanding of emptiness. So without that, you cannot proceed further along the path of accumulation.
Hola so.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, mango chana le to maro.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
okay. Yeah. That the what is that data or lamri bol doge.
Oh yeah, we'll do our Lamrim dedication prayer.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, from my 2 collections, that space that I have amassed from working with effort in this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds and demise is guided by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives to free. May I find the best of complete great paths of the teachings, may I see all the ends by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings who points in the paths as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread. Once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted that peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this great path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path raised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous traditions, may they always be assisted by the Mighty One, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. From capital crown, jewel of the sages, as the Latin snows, Roshan Chakra at your feet, and